right, welcome to Coffee, Coaching, and Callings, a live podcast created for coaches, leaders, and helping professionals that are on a mission to lead a successful and heart-centered life. Your hosts today are myself, Laurel Elders, and Tabitha Danloe of the Institute for Integrative Intelligence, where our mission is to elevate human potential through the art and the science of masterful coaching. Today, we are going to be focusing on business success tips, and our topic for today is personality types and business success and how that impacts what we do and how we show up and how we market ourselves. And Tabitha, I'm so thrilled to discuss this with you because, as you know, we have had this conversation for so many years. I'm a super introvert and you are such an extrovert. So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to laugh when you picked this topic because it is a conversation we've had over and over and over again. And even the people around us, the coaches that we train, our friends, they see how well we balance each other and the different input we can give with marketing from an introvert to an extrovert perspective. So I just kind of had to laugh too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I know as an introvert, I kind of freaked out about the marketing piece of going into business because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go out there and consistently network and push and, sell and it. And I found that, thank goodness, that is so not true.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading Quiet by Suzanne Cain. So she covers the research of introverts versus extroverts. And it's just that we all process and get energy in different ways. So finding ways to market ourselves, put ourselves out there in ways that align and support us is the game changer.
And maybe we should explain maybe the difference between introvert and extrovert and how that energy comes to be. So, Laurel, how do you recharge your battery as an introvert?
I have a lot of Laurel time, downtime, time that's not pulling me in different directions, but where I can just kind of pull into myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that recharges me. And on the other side of that is I actually stopped attending a lot of networking events. I'll still go to one or two here and there because it took so much energy. So I learned that strategies like sitting and writing, that fills me up. I love writing. I love connecting with people through writing or, those types of mediums. And you as an extrovert?
So as an extrovert, I recharge my battery by being with others. And I think a lot of extroverts get this kind of mixed up because even extroverts are like, sometimes I want to just be alone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, we all need alone time. But kind of the difference is as extroverts spend more and more time alone, they feel more drained. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they suddenly go out in the world, they go to dinner with friends, they go to a networking event, they're all and all recharged and excited again. So introverts need that alone time to recharge and extroverts need people to connect with to recharge.
Yes. And Suzanne spoke to that in the book Quiet, where she said, and I thought this was so important and something I learned is an introvert will walk into a room with a group of people and it's so much energy for them. Mm-hmm. An extrovert they found is they have low arousal. So to get energy, it required engagement, mm-hmm. which was the opposite for the introvert. So I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on ambiverts?
Well, what's interesting, my studies on Myers-Briggs, so there's introversion and extroversion they found is more on a spectrum. Right. So it's not just all or nothing. So like, for example, my type, INFJ, we're the most extroverted out of the introverts. And so people will say, you're an introvert? I would never guess because I can engage and I love engaging, and I can only do it for so long. Right. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point to think about it like a spectrum, because I think a lot of people automatically don't really know where they fit. And so they're like, well, I must be an ambivert. And if you do the Myers-Briggs test, it really is kind of a range. Because I'm not as extroverted as some of my friends, right? And so I look at like extreme extroverts and I'm like, whoa, I'm way introverted compared to them, right? But I'm not as introverted as you, right?
Mhm.
So it's good to remember it's kind of a range. And really we're going to have different moments that we have to recharge our battery. And the same is true for business and marketing. And is your marketing plan that you're doing draining your soul dry, sucking the life out of you, or is it really filling up your cup?
Mhm.
That's something I really love to when I'm working with coaches or other business owners and I'm talking about a sustainable, authentic marketing plan. One of the things we talk about is energy, because I think sometimes they think of this like, okay, I'll just, I'll grin and bear it. I'll push through. I'll make it happen. And I'm like, no, no, no. Marketing is like the blood of your business. This has to happen forever for your business to survive and hopefully to thrive, right? To get not just into that, past the survival point, but into the black, into actual profits and growth and all of that. And so ideally your marketing plan like is something that you enjoy waking up and doing every single week, and it doesn't just suck your soul dry.
Right. Yes. It's like, it's an expression of what Gay Hendricks calls in his book, The Big Leap, your genius zone,
Mhm.
where you're operating in your genius, your gift to the world versus he made a really good distinction, what you're excellent at, what you're good at, and what you're not as good at, right? What doesn't come naturally. And then there's the genius zone. And he's like, the more you can leap into that and operate from the genius zone, your gifts, the more impact basically you can have and more fulfillment and alignment as well.
And sometimes it takes a little trial, a little trial and error to figure that out, right?
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do think a lot of marketing is like testing something.
Mhm.
And I have a big rule, don't go 1,000 feet outside your comfort zone or a mile. Like 100 feet is really good. Because if you're a mile outside your comfort zone, that's way too much. It's just probably not worth that energy output. And maybe eventually you can make it comfortable, but the amount of time and energy that you're going to put into it to make it comfortable, you've wasted a lot of time and energy. And so if it's 100 feet outside your comfort zone, that's okay. Sometimes we got to try stuff out to see if it really lands or not for us. Not just energetically, but from an ROI perspective as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And one thing I've learned from being a coach is that every single human being has their own unique success formula, period, dot,
Yep.
period, dot. So really learning that self-awareness piece of what brings me to life, not just about marketing, how I manage my business,
Yep.
right? You and I have talked about how, to me, a full-time coaching workload would be 10 to 12 clients max.
Right.
And for you,
A little bit more.
oh yeah, a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's really defining what is your version of success and how can I step into that?
Yeah. I love that reminder of what kind of that pure idea of coaching really is that truth, that wisdom lies inside each person, their own unique formula for success. And that was reminded to me this last weekend a couple of times. And it just is so amazing how many people want to look outside themselves for that truth. They want the easy fix. And there's a lot out there. You can spend 50 grand on a marketing program. Every click and ad you're going to come across is going to say, do it this way. This will make you 6 figures. This will make you a millionaire.
Mhm.
I promise it's not going to work. There's no one size fits all to marketing.
Mhm.
Not quite like finding your own authentic marketing plan.
Right, right. Yeah, that is really true.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing that comes to mind is just the honoring our limitations. I had this realization that in coaching, we are future focused, we believe in possibilities, we believe in activating new possibilities. And I was like, well, but there's also wisdom in acknowledging my hardwiring,
Mm-hmm.
how how I was born hardwired as an introvert. I've tried to change it. I've tried to fight it. I've had people tell me, no, don't limit yourself. And it's the more I fought it, the more burnt out I got. And so
Mhm.
really honoring that as a human being, we do have limitations.
Mhm.
And that's good to know. And that's great to honor. And it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's that aspect of authenticity, and it's like,
Mm.
where's the balance between pushing and growing through our limiting beliefs
Mm.
while staying very honoring to our authentic selves? And I think that's really confusing sometimes. And I think we're so excited to share things. Sometimes we're so eager to try or to push, and society really shapes that. Like, I feel like in our time of being friends and working together, seeing how much pressure society puts on you as an introvert versus me
Yeah.
to show up a certain way and to look a certain way, especially in the workplace, with relationships, with friendships, right? And so I do feel like there's this delicate balance that you're talking about between how do we be really authentic to our true self and still push ourselves to grow sometimes. And I think that's up to us. It's the areas that we want to love and accept, this is who I am and this is what serves and supports me. And then maybe there's these areas I want to lean into and grow with and challenge myself with. So
Yeah,
it's all a balance.
it is. And it's, I think that genius zone based approach, because I know in Suzanne's book, Quiet, she brought up that um, society, at least US society, is really geared towards extroversion. And
Mhm.
it really does, introverts do have a harder time
Yeah.
in navigating that. And so to my fellow introverts out there who are running a business or just starting a business and, learning what is my capacity, limitations, all of that, really invite you to consider, a piece of advice that was given to me when I was starting out. Hey, if you're not that keynote speaker to 1,000 people, maybe you're a writer. Maybe you can
Mhm.
do videos, like even videos. That's just one, it's you doing a video, right? So finding um, a way to get your genius out there. Don't assume I can't do it because you're an introvert. Get your genius out there regardless.
Or a podcast.
Or a podcast. Yes.
And this was totally inspired by Laurel, not me. Laurel, I'm reminded of a story that happened with us years ago when I brought you to a networking event. Do you remember that?
Oh, painfully.
Can we tell the story? Because
Oh, yes,
I think that this
absolutely.
is a really useful, like, learn from our mistakes story kind of
Yeah.
story we can share with everyone. So I've been a member of BNI for, gosh, I think we're going on 8 years.
Which is Business Networking International, for those of you that haven't heard of it.
And it's a really large networking organization worldwide. And we meet weekly. There's a lot of structure. It's probably the most structurized networking group that exists. And it's been very successful for me in my business. I have a really great group that I meet with. There's a lot of love and connection and closeness, even though it's a professional organization. We kind of have this unique group. And so I was just so excited, especially, at the beginning, of course, and extroverts, I think, especially are like, we want to share our favorite restaurants or favorite movies. I think that's just a characteristic of extroverts is like, oh my gosh, have you tried this? And right. And so I just kept like annoying Laurel to come visit the organization with me. And I just was so sure because this was such a fun thing for me. And I'd seen her teach. So like I'd seen her in this very confident teaching, slight, kind of extroversion space. So I was like, it'll be fine. And she kept saying like, I don't know. I've done these. I don't love these. I'm an introvert. And so, what happened when you came finally, when I bugged you to come so much, you finally had to.
I did. I went and then I was I just was so exhausted by the end of it. I was like, Tab, I gotta go. I think I left early. Not
You
not before it was finished, but
right.
yeah.
You pretty much
Yeah.
left right when it ended. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I had never seen Laurel quite like that. Like I watched
Mhm.
the energy leave her body as like the meeting went on. I was like, what is happening to my friend Laurel over here? And it was a very important learning lesson for me that
Mhm.
I've implemented as I'm helping people with their authentic marketing for the last 8 years. I'm like, oh, we really got to look at this energy stuff more closely than I realized.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but I'm glad we did it. Like that's one of those, sometimes we got to test it out, try it out and be like, nope, cross that off the list.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
And then there's also other things to consider because I have met some extroverts that consider themselves highly sensitive. So I felt like originally I felt called to coach, yet I also felt this huge struggle because I also was painfully shy, had social anxiety. As a type 5 Enneagram, those of you that know me, I can be kind of socially awkward and, and especially at networking events.
And type 5 is
I'll
the
claim it.
investigator or the observer type.
Yes, thank you, the observer. So there's other considerations. It's just honoring how we're hardwired because there are extroverts that are highly sensitive, and highly sensitive means, maybe highly intuitive. You're bringing in a lot of information, especially
Or
when a
empath.
group is large.
And
Uh,
sometimes they're empaths. And so they
yep.
take on those feelings.
Yeah.
I have to manage that somewhat. So I can definitely overdo it in those areas because I consider myself highly sensitive, but I also sometimes can shut that off. And so there's some
Mhm.
days where I'm just a little more highly sensitive than others, or my empath radar is like on turbo drive. Um, and it's funny, my really extroverted friends, they're like, oh, come to this thing, come to this thing. I'm like, nope, got to stay at home tonight.
Mhm.
And so for a moment, I might look like an introvert in that sense. Mhm.
Right. Yes. Because I know we've talked about how you give yourself Sundays because
Mhm.
you're
Oh,
extroverting all week. And
yep.
so you give yourself that time to
Mhm.
recharge.
Can I share with everyone how my delicious Sunday looks? Because I think people sometimes need permission for this.
Yes, please do.
So years ago, I kind of claimed Sunday as this special rest day for me. And I know it is traditionally a day of rest for a lot of people, but I I literally like stay in my pajamas and I do not leave my home. Like that's the goal, is to not leave my house unless maybe I want to.
Mhm.
So that's the only exception. So, I don't schedule things, I don't plan things, like nothing gets scheduled on a Sunday except for maybe once in a blue moon. And it's my day to recharge and to loaf around the house and to putz around and to snuggle with my dogs and just to do whatever I want. No agenda, no work, just total relaxing and napping and TV or reading, whatever I want to do. So it's a huge introvert day for me. And when I don't do that, I really notice a difference the following week. And it's become such a Tabitha-ism, maybe,
Mhm.
that all of my friends and even my family, like they honor this, they know this. Like I hate to say this, but even like Mother's and Father's Day, that's always falls on a Sunday, and they know like, okay, well, do you want to go have dinner on Monday? Or, like they just honor it now because I really held this boundary. So for those people who think that they can't hold a boundary like that, you just got to stick with it for a minute. So,
So true.
and
Yes.
I'm more of an extrovert, and look at me claiming some introvert time so that I can
Mhm.
stay more in balance and give what I need to give to my clients and my business throughout the week.
Right. Yeah. I think there's an assumption that extroverts are just always on. And all of my extrovert friends would say, nope, I need my downtime too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So how about also looking at the Enneagram and the different personality types and just how the different gifts, but also the different struggles. And like type 1 perfectionist, what would you say are good tips for running and marketing a business for a type 1?
That's a really good question. And so with my type 1 clients, type 1s, so with the Enneagram and different personality types, there's some types, introverts or extroverts, that find themselves grouped. And so type 1s I find can be either or. And so what I try to encourage them to do, though, is things that create fluidity and not rigidness. So let me give you an example. I'm part of the BNI networking group that we just talked about. And ones I've had several clients do really good there that are type 1s, the perfectionist, until they get into a leadership role or until they get into a different type of kind of leader role where there's rules to follow. And then their ones get so hung up on the rules and rigidity that they're no longer attracting things positively to their business because they're too much in the rules. So I know that might seem a little confusing, but it's staying a little more fluid and playful in their marketing so that they're not hung up on the rules. Because if you're just focused on the rules of marketing, well, there's very few rules, honestly. It's again, that authentic marketing piece.
Yeah. There's principles, but not so much rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so for ones, I might recommend maybe not a BNI that has a lot of structure, but maybe if they're extroverted and enjoy marketing and connecting with people, a different type of networking organization that meets like once a month, that meets more casually over dinner or breakfast. A lot of Chamber of Commerces offer that. So that's maybe more where I've found my ones do a little bit better. And even the introverts then can hang with that because it's like once a month versus once a week.
Yeah, that's so true. And really speaks to how when we become self-aware, it helps us evolve.
Yeah. The other technique I found for my type 1 clients is joining a nonprofit that they really love, because of course the type 1 has that love of fairness and justice and kind of natural advocacy. And so sometimes part of their authentic marketing plan is finding the nonprofit that they already align with, that they would do regardless of their business, that they can really just sink their teeth into and love. And then through that new network, business just kind of happens.
Love it.
And that's actually been really helpful for a few people.
Nice. And how about type 2, the helpers?
Oh, my type 2, the helpers. There's a lot that they can do. I do find more type 2s are extroverted than introverted. Not all the time, but I'd say more of the time. And the biggest thing, I feel like all type 2s need a few coaching sessions to learn how to say maybe before they commit to anything.
That's a good point.
What the 2s are going to have to look out for is overcommitting and wanting to be so helpful that they suddenly are doing too much marketing, but maybe not for the right reasons. Yes. So for example, I see a lot of my type 2 clients join these networking groups or start these marketing things. And because they want to be so helpful, they take on all these other things that have nothing to do with marketing, or the back end of getting the marketing kind of ready, whether it's social media or putting together forms or PowerPoints, whatever it is. And it's like, they're not actually marketing their business anymore. They're spending a lot of time in the admin and weeds.
Right. Or also giving away too many services for free. That can happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about type 3, the achievers?
Type 3, the achievers, similar to 2s, they might overdo it. So, type 3s typically are very good at extroversion. I've met more 3s that are extroverted than introverted, and they really can get away with some hardcore networking. And so I'd say find your strength, find your group that you can really thrive with. Most 3s do really well in that aspect. 3s also do really well with videos and really just putting themselves out there. Live streams, 3s can kind of do that with maybe a little more ease and less anxiety than other types, just to go live and to put it out there.
And type 4, the individualist, romantic.
Ooh, type 4s, I can't tell you what to do because you have to keep it yours. It has to be creative, because the moment someone tells you what to do, you're not going to want to do it.
Yep.
And that's also why I love being a coach. I
I have a
have
4 wing, so I'm over here like, yep.
So I've seen fours do anything and everything across the map. I've seen fours be very successful in traditional marketing things like radio and TV and networking. And then fours can get sometimes super creative by handing out flyers at a concert to get attention on a product, or having temporary tattoos that they pass out for different marketing and strategies. So I don't know, sky's the limit with fours. You guys are super creative. So use it. Use
That's
your
a
gift.
that's a really good point.
And social media, oh my gosh, sometimes fours are just, they're the innovators and they're really doing some cool stuff on social media. So go to town.
Nice.
How
And
about how about fives?
type 5 over
Yes,
here,
sir, for the investigators, Miss
the
Laurel.
investigator. Let's just talk about writing and geeking out. Anything that so type 5s are just so much, we're just searching for truth, and we just want to know and be an expert of things, so because we just want to gather so much information, so finding ways to share that is
Mhm,
the freedom point for the 5, is sharing through writing or teaching, or any way that you can kind of take all that information and help deliver it
mhm.
to the world.
And I would say most fives don't do well with networking now that
Nope.
I've observed that. Most fives are not going to enjoy kind of being part of big groups or big collectives. I think finding your voice in whatever way works for you and standing in that mastery, because you guys really do have that. And then like if you can get a little courageous once you've done some writing, like think about doing a video blog. I feel like going live, like I've watched Laurel get more and more courage to do these lives. And 9 years ago, Laurel probably wouldn't have.
Mm-mm.
And so I just love that you've kind of grown in that. And I think that's a great example of like being authentic, but leaning in a little bit over
Yeah.
time. But I do remember you did a lot of recorded videos for a while, and that felt really good to you. And I think that's great for a five to like think of your writing, but then sharing that on a video that you can stop and maybe edit or start over if need be.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And type 6, the loyalist, we have Tabitha.
I find such a mishmash of introverts and extroverts in the six world, but pretty much all of them are really good with people. Like sixes are
Mhm.
kind of known for being good listeners and just that really dutiful type. And so sixes tend to do really well in networking, but finding like two people to connect with. So they're not going to be the seven that I'll just talk about now. So the seven is the enthusiast or the adventurer. They can just go to town. They're little social butterflies. They're almost always extroverted. I've I've only met one person who said they were an introverted seven, and I'm not sure I fully believe that, but but they can really handle
Mhm.
lots of interaction and contact, and kind of the more the better. Whereas sixes I've discovered do really well plugging into a couple of people, but then really sinking their teeth into that and developing more of a connection and a relationship. Sixes also can be pretty bold, and they can do, even though we're scaredy cats, we're also really courageous lionhearts, right? And so I've seen sixes do things like speaking engagements. I've seen that with sevens and threes as well.
Mhm.
Um, and then sixes can even do a lot with social media. So it kind of just depends on if they're an introverted six or an extroverted six. So
Yeah. So interesting. And so that brings us to 8, the challenger or advocate.
yeah, so similar to the ones, it's kind of noticing when your marketing is maybe not serving you. For the ones, it was kind of the rules were making them too rigid, but for the eights, it's that toughness or the bluntness that they're coming across. Um, Eights can kind of do well with almost all types of marketing, but also if they are too blunt, they might need to consider someone else stepping in and doing some of their marketing.
Mm.
if that makes sense. So if we think of most 8s being CEOs or leaders of organizations, a lot of them are not actually doing their marketing. And I'm not saying they can't. I'm saying they have to really know when they're showing up in a helpful way or when they're overwhelming people with their intensity.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And then type 9, the peacemaker.
I would say they're most similar to the 5.
Mm-hmm.
So for 9s, they're almost always introverted. So it's writing, it's being really thoughtful, maybe some vlogging. And then for the 9s, it's actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Taking action's a little hard for them sometimes. I have seen 9s sometimes do well with networking groups, but maybe the online versions versus the in-person versions, or the ones that don't meet all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that just require a lot is hard for their introverted self. So similar to 5s.
Yeah, really great points. All right. Any other final tips on aligning with your superpowers to help you thrive as a business owner?
Just to remember that everyone will have a different authentic marketing plan. What works for me doesn't work for Laurel. What works for Laurel doesn't work for me. And it should look a little different. There might be some similarities, but again, it's finding those authentic things that resonate that you can wake up every week and do for the rest of your business. Marketing is not something that really works best if you start and stop it a lot. Then you start to get this guy, which a lot of people experience, and they're like, oh, I'm doing really, really good, so I'm going to stop marketing. And then they're like, why do I not have clients or business all of a sudden? And and that's a really hard pace to continue with. Whereas like if we're just kind of in this nice little steady place with marketing, our business will really sustain well. So it's really loving what you do every week and knowing you can sustain that energetically.
Right. Yeah, it's so important. I would also say, so my tip would be to really consider your authentic voice in what you're doing with your business. I've noticed some people will, when they're just starting out, myself included, I would write all about what I did, how I was of service. And I didn't focus so much on my clients, my potential clients. So finding what is my story, I know we talked about story, sharing that from that authentic space, and then connecting with who you're serving, like really honoring who they are.
You reminded me of a good book when you were just saying that, Laurel, called Building a Story Brand. And it's all about clarifying your message for the customer, the client, versus like making them the hero, not you, essentially. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I found some people, some introverts especially, help. It's like, oh, the spotlight's not on me. I'm actually in service for a reason. And so stepping into that, can help people find some ease. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a delightful conversation. I really love exploring these topics. And thank you so much for joining us today. We hope these messages have been a lantern to your path as you expand your success as a coach, leader, or helping professional. You can join the conversation further at integrativeintelligence.global. I'm going to go read a book. Bye, y'all. See you next time.